All right. So we're coming off last week, 2 weeks of gains, and a lot of it was that PCE on Friday, at least, that kind of kept us going.
Yep.
The fact that inflation came in just a tick lower, giving people confident about the Fed rate cut, what areas of the market does that make you bullish on?
So a lot of what I've been talking about for a while is focusing down on the market cap spectrum. So look at those small and mids. And these are exactly the companies that are going to benefit the most for this kind of news. And there are also cheaper valuations. And we're looking at much higher growth for 2026. We're looking at about 19% profit growth for next year for small and mid caps versus 15% for the S&P 500. So cheaper for higher profit, good Fed cuts, all lining up for a good year.
Okay. A lot of people have called for a kind of a rally in small caps.
Yep.
Some people called it a catch-up trade, though, and other people pointed out that these companies aren't quite as able to take advantage of AI as some of their larger counterparts. Is that a concern for you?
Look, absolutely, they may be in some points not as able to take up an AI when you're talking about really big push-ups, but they are able to incorporate them immediately within their systems and increase that profitability. And as we know, that AI, when you're talking about just getting software in, not necessarily having to build new data centers, there's a lot of different companies where you can make incremental improvements and profitability within your company quite easily.
All right, let's get to your word of the day. It's approvals, and that leads us to your pick
Yes.
in the biotech space. So spell out the thesis here. What are the approvals that you're looking at, and why does this lead us to your pick?
So one of the things that we've seen a lot in the headlines is the FDA had a lot of shifts, change in turnover, head counts, that type of thing, and the approval process looked like it was starting to slow down. We're starting to see some of that turnover resolve itself, particularly in 2026. And then a catch up on approvals. And so those companies, those healthcare, biopharma, biotechs that really got beaten up are the ones that are there to really be poised to take over once this resolves and get into 2026. My top pick is Neurocrine. It really is positioned as one of the absolute best within the area, particularly it's both mid-cap and a biopharma. And I love it for three major reasons. One, it's focused on neurological and psychiatric, which is actually where the FDA has actually increased approvals rather than slowed down. It has Increza, which means it's a cash cow. It doesn't have to go to the market for cash. It doesn't need a lot of debt. And fourth, I really like it because it has a lot of options that are already deep within the approval process. We're not talking about 3 years out. We're talking about 2026.
Okay. At the same time, even you admit it's a bit risky. When you're looking at biotech, there's a lot of risk there.
Yeah.
Why not focus on something more consumer-facing? We've seen really strong spending throughout the holidays.
Yep.
Like I mentioned that Goldman Sachs report that came out last night. They see real income for middle and upper middle-income consumers rising. Why not look at the consumer parts of the market that seem to remain strong as opposed to the riskier parts?
Well, partially because I did that a few weeks ago when I was on with you. So I did want to pick different names. So I still stand by my picks from whatever it was 3 weeks ago. So still love Ralph Lauren, still love Signet Jewelers, absolutely love consumer discretionaries. Not saying that you shouldn't invest them. These are just some that I think that are a little riskier, absolutely, but really have that power to take off and fly for 2026.
What about transports? We were just talking to an analyst from Bank of America about transport and some of the tailwinds there. Any excitement in your mind about transports and just the supply chain? We know the president's looking at the food supply chain, but in general, we've been in a recession. Is this possibly an entry point right now?
I think so. I think anywhere outside of your Mag 7, there are pockets of opportunity going into next year. And so I think if you're finding those names that have that catalyst and necessarily have good balance sheets to begin with, we're not talking about beaten up stocks because they look terrible from fundamentals, but solid balance sheets and going into next year, lots of opportunities.